Jesus, I crave to know you, just to know you will satisfy my soul.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 184. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on this episode. So, it occurred to me over the course of the last few days, we're 84 episodes into this podcast, and I really haven't kind of laid out my testimony or, shared about myself. And so I think I want to do that for this episode today. And I think it would be neat or useful if, periodically, I just kind of share a little of myself and my situation. I know, I haven't reached out to many of you, or haven't heard from many of you rather. And so just to, give a little different nuance to this podcast and a little relatability. So I'm not just some voice, but maybe we could connect in some other kinds of ways. I think that would be neat. So I do appreciate those who have sent in emails, given some feedback, interacted in whatever form that is. I appreciate those, and I would ask that more people. I would love to hear from all of you who are listening. You can reach out through just email, the Bible Study Podcasts at gmail.com. I also have the website is continual development. So there's a contact section there that you can reach out. That's the website, the Bible Study Podcasts.com. Links to those are in the description notes of each episode, so you can find me there. So yeah, today's episode, I think I just want to kind of share the unfiltered story of the progression of my life and my faith journey, which is definitely what it is, a journey for each of us. And it takes a unique some twists and turns for all of us, but by the grace of God, He has brought us to where we are today. And so I'm appreciative and thankful for that, as I'm sure you are as well, for your particular story. So I guess just to lay the foundation, I was a young child, about 2 years old, and my birth parents, they were not in a position to take care of myself, and I have a full-blooded sister. They were not in position to take care of us, so they had reached out to my aunt and uncle and asking if they would be willing to watch after us for a period of time till they got up on their feet. And by this point in time, my aunt and uncle had already raised kids. They were grown, and by this point have moved out. And so I think they were, in their late 40s, maybe 50 at the time. So my aunt and uncle agreed, and so my sister and I, moved in. And again, the arrangement was just temporary, but over the course of some time, and I don't have all the details, but it became a permanent situation. And while I'm thankful for the opportunity to relocate, as the previous family situation would have been very difficult, and there's a lot of drug addiction, poverty, a lot of some psychological issues, just a lot of problems that are present in my birth family. While I'm thankful that they had the, sight to see a need for our resituationing, there was a struggle for me, as far as I can remember, a bit on this being translocated. And as you can imagine, there were plenty of behavior issues and in my past, and so for this testimony, I purely just kind of keep it from my perspective, as that's what I can speak best to. Also, just to say up front too, I really don't have a lot of memories as a young child. Could be because of just blocking things out. Even in my aunt and uncle's household, I don't really remember a whole lot. I do have some really good memories of time spent together doing different things, going to the mountains, cookouts, family get-togethers, things like that. I don't really remember a whole lot of stuff from my early years, for whatever reason. So my aunt and uncle, and from this point on, I'll just call them, parents, mom and dad, because that's what they became very quickly, and I didn't really know anything else. So, being raised by now my parents, it was a very religious home, very spiritual upbringing. I was brought up in church, around Christian influences, and Christian input. Well, we, as a young child, I got, from what I can recall, which is not well, and I really don't remember the moment, but I gave my heart to Jesus, became a Christian, got saved at a very early age. And, that was pretty much my paradigm, was a paradigm of, Christianity. Now, fast forward, I don't want to belabor this too much, and I'm sorry if I seem to be stammering. This is just kind of, natural and organic. I don't have anything prepared to make it more streamlined. But as I began to be brought up in this Christian household, as any young person can probably relate, and even you adults listening, I had my ups and downs with Christianity, and I had my ups and downs in just the religious upbringing narrative. And I do recall times where I was very passionate about following after Jesus and following after God, and I do recall though times where I didn't find myself interested, and then times that I was really, we'll just say adamant, very, very interested and very eager. And so there were times of that. And I remember one particular situation when I was probably in the vicinity, somewhere between middle school and high school. I went on a church retreat, and I was your typical teen, interested mostly just in, I think maybe at that time I played guitar, I played soccer in high school, and I was interested in girls. So that was pretty much my bit. And I went on this youth retreat with this church we had previously attended. We weren't currently attending there, but I was familiar with them. And but it had been a number of years since I'd really been engaged with any of them there, so it was a little bit foreign and odd, but it was a Pentecostal church. So if you're familiar with that denomination, Church of God, Pentecostal, charismatic type of services and experience. So I go, and it was, fun time, more about engaging with some of the youth there. We would have these evening services in our cabin that we were staying in. and it was just a time kind of worship and prayer. People just kind of gathered around in the living area there, and I had not really had much of a recent exposure to the manifestations of the Spirit, and so that was kind of a foreign experience to me. Even though I'd been brought up in that type of environment, it wasn't in the more recent years that I had been around that dynamic. So it was that evening when I began to. At first, it was awkward to be around, speaking in tongues, more of a charismatic energy in the kind of in the throes of worship, so to speak. And so it was a bit awkward for me at first, as I can kind of vaguely recall. Now I'm 38 years old now. I would have been still in high school, so this is quite a long time ago. So, bear with me in my recollection, but it was a bit awkward. But at some point in time, I began to I wanted, I don't know, I don't even know how that transition happened, but I became interested in pursuing this dynamic with the Holy Spirit. And so I began to ask for the Holy Spirit to fill me to overflowing. I think that was even the words that I used, and it was just a repetitive ask. That's all I knew to say, and that's all that came out. Was I just asked the Holy Spirit to fill me to overflowing, and that was it. And I don't know how long hands lifted maybe, and eyes closed, and that was the words that I just asked over and over and over. And what seemed like forever transitioned into something that I don't even really have a great memory of. I have my current wife, her mother has told me some things about that time, because she was actually there coincidentally, and but her daughter was not. We were different ages at the time, so she had kind of mentioned to me that of the scenario and what that appeared as though. But I became filled with the Holy Spirit, and it was a I'm trying to navigate the words to describe it. This is different than to say, of course, when we're saved, there's a feeling being filled with the Holy Spirit, but this was an encounter. Let's call it that, an encounter with the Holy Spirit, and it was one of power and very experiencing, if I could say that. So I'll spare all the details of that, but that goes on for quite a while. But of course, I lost track of time, so I don't really know. It wasn't that it was I lost control and became, if you will, possessed. It was just it was an encounter, and you are in this place, this, I'll just call it heavenly type place, and there just begins this dynamic, this exchange of meeting the one who is God, this Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God. And so that was a real marking milestone for me, and it set me on, I don't know that I would necessarily call it a journey, but it set me on a place of tangible reality to the things of God. It definitely marked me, but just like any teenager, high schooler, I continued to struggle with various, things and, struggles and lack of desire of the things of God. And so it was this up and down thing. And I do recall there were times in my life where I wanted to pursue God and times I couldn't care less. And so this type of roller coaster continued through much of my adult life. There were there were times where I couldn't have been further from God, and then there were times where I was hungry for Him. I do recall several instances where I, when I was living on my own, I do recall instances where I used to, play guitar, and I would write poetry, and so, I was kind of in that vein, if you will. And I remember there would be times when I, be by myself, and no one's around, so I'm not worried about how I appear. But I would find myself in these places of, emotion, and I, I might be writing a song or poetry, and there would be this encounter that I would have, in the privacy of my own place, and I would begin to just kind of weep, and I would just begin to talk to God, and I would write down things, and like questions. I would write down things. It would shift from poetry into conversation, and it's kind of what I ended up calling them conversations with God. But I would write down these things, and I would get a response. It would be as though the thought comes straight into my head, and I write an answer to the thing that I wrote. And so it became this dialoguing, and it just kind of happened. And those happened not all the time, but they happened several times. I would say maybe 6 to 12 times, maybe, that I can recall, just at various times in my life. And they didn't happen necessarily in times where I was at my best. In fact, most of the times they happened when could be argued that I was at my worst. So it was, I believe, God injecting Himself into my story, into my existence, and just kind of reminding me of His awareness, and of His desire, and His patience with me, really. And so these happened, like I said, several times, and for some apparent reasons or moment. Well, fast forward on, I'm still up and down. I have in my mind that I'm a Christian, and I've had this experience, an encounter with the Holy Spirit of, power and real, the fireworks type, if you will. And I may have had other experiences too that I just don't recall in this moment, but still, it was an up and down thing with the Lord. And I get married. My wife, we dated throughout her high school, and it was a very up and down relationship as well. And we get married, and early into our marriage, at this point in time, again, I was far from the Lord. I didn't really care anything about God, and in fact, I had probably, I use this as an excuse, really, but I'd been burned a time or two in religion and Christianity, and so I'd use that kind of as a catalyst to just distance myself from the people of God and the things of God. So I was very hard and bitter, and didn't want anything to do with it. And so I really, really acted out, and so, like I said, we had gotten married. We were married not long, really, and I found myself not like I was lost and I just discovered myself, but I had at this point in time, I'd had an affair. My wife and I, we were separating. There was a point in time where we nearly got divorced, and God just miraculously changed our minds on the way to sign the papers. So like I was a truly and genuinely bad person. And I was selfish. I wanted just to, I lived for myself. At this later on the point, now my timeline's probably terrible. So when my wife's listening to this, she's probably thinking your timeline's way off. So I'm a terrible accounter of time, if you know me closely. But essentially, I'll just conclude: multiple affairs, multiple ways of just living for myself, reckless, careless, not interested in anyone but myself. Even at these times, we had small children, and I just cared about myself, and I was doing my own thing. But there was a point in time in our marriage, and this had went over the course of some years, and it's really a miracle that my wife didn't leave. She had every right to, but she didn't, and the Lord just kept reminding her that just to give me time, to be patient, and he's working. Well, fast forward some time, and we have at the time, I think it was four. I guess it was 4 kids at the time, the 4th one being the youngest. And I had just finished school. I had went back to school to get my doctorate, and I had went back and finished that up. And we had been living in the Kingsport area at the time, and we were wanting to transition back to closer to family, which would be in the Knoxville area. So we both kind of we both had been thinking about doing that, kind of independent. That's the word I'm looking for. Independent of each other. We kind of had that thought or desire. Well, when we came together, we talked about it, and we wanted to get closer to family, and we also both kind of had this desire to get our kids back into church. Again, remember, I really didn't want anything to do with God for years, most of my adult life. And at this point in time, we had reconciled, and things were going relatively well, but I still feel as lost as I can be. Well, a door opens up, and through my work, we were able to transition back into the Knoxville area. Well, my wife at the time was going to visit a friend, and I was by myself at home and this was back in Knoxville, for whatever reason. I can't begin to imagine why, besides the fact that just God intervened upon me. But for whatever reason, I decided to go to a church service, and it was a church that I'd been to before, a different one than what I'd grown up in, but similar. I decided to go back, and I couldn't tell you the sermon or the songs, but something happened to me that day that I can only describe as a heart transplant. It was from that point that I was marked and began to be hungry for the things of God. I didn't have any kind of paradigm for what happened, or I just was hungry for the things of God. And so when my wife came home, she actually had commented to me later that when she returned home, the home that we lived in, felt different. There was something different about it, and she had felt the change. And so it was from that point where I think, again, I'm terrible with time, but it would have probably been in the neighborhood of 2018, maybe, when that change had marked me. And it's just, I say all that to say that from that point, it was a marketed hunger for God, to know Him more, to seek Him, to understand Him, to explore the depths of Him. I've had insatiable hunger to know Him more, to explore His Word and to learn and to deep dive and grow. And so I hope that, to those listening, you may find yourself even in a place of, you feel as lost as you could be, or your situation may be so heavy around you right now that you don't know how it's going to work. Well, just encourage you that, with God, all things are possible. And in our story, He made what was impossible possible. He healed our marriage. It's not to say we don't have difficulties and struggles, but He definitely healed the brokenness that was the result of my infidelity, my deceit and trickery and all these things. He has healed much, and He continues to heal much of what we struggled with or struggle with. There's always things that the devil would want to try to use to manipulate us if we'll let him. He would love to. And so I just hope that this encourages you, gives you a little glimpse at my story and how God, rescued me. And like I said, I can only describe it as a heart transplant. I became a different person. I desired different things. I wanted to participate in different things. It was somewhat of a switch, like a switch on moment, but it was also, there was some gradual change as well. So if your story is somewhere in those, gradual or a switch, yeah, be encouraged if you're not one way or the other. It can be both, and it was for me. So, I would just say, encourage you to press in, ask. You may not even feel right now a desire to know God or to be interested in Him, but if there's a nagging, clawing, voice at you that resonates in this, just ask Him to change your heart. Ask Him to reveal Himself to you, because He desires it more than what you could possibly desire it. So I would just hope that that's an encouragement. I appreciate what He's done in my life and how He continues to use me and to know me, and allows me to know Him. So we'll just roll it out with that, and I hope that's a blessing to you. And if you have any feedback or questions, please send me those. I would love to read them, to respond back, just to get some, a little bit of interaction. And so hope this was a help, and we will see you on the next one. God bless.
If it means that I'm close to you, I would trade a million lifetimes for